number one, you cannot, obviously, as a First Amendment organization or anyone, directly steal something. That is illegal, right? That is theft. But even the New York Times, that has an axe to grind here, isn't saying that that's what happened. Now, they allege, maybe they knew that it was stolen materials, but guess what? Journalists know that they're using stolen materials all the time. Is it unseemly to pay $40,000, to pay any money for information and access? Yeah, it's unseemly. It's also not illegal. It's considered sort of bad journalistic practice, and it is unseemly, but it is not illegal. So even in the story that the New York Times is spinning here, it's hard to see, outside of political motivation, what is the justification for the criminalizing of these activities?
Unless, Krystal, they can prove that Project Veritas directly organized the theft of these materials and orchestrated it directly, not purchasing it after it had already been stolen, then this is a BS political persecution. If you look and you read within the story, they say, as one of their accusations for why Project Veritas shouldn't be treated with First Amendment protections, is that they contacted a representative for Ashley Biden and didn't identify themselves as part of Project Veritas. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't do that. At the same time, that's not illegal. Like, it's not illegal for you to use false or deceptive tactics in order to get information. And in fact, there have been many instances when reporters have either not identified themselves or inserted themselves into a situation without identifying themselves and have used information around them in order to publish stories. Once again, I would personally never do that. It doesn't fit within my ethics, but I am a First Amendment maximalist. And in this case, they did not do anything wrong. I also find it very troubling whenever I read all of this, that the New York Times is just willing to take these criminal prosecution documents straight from the Department of Justice and just establish their narrative. Look, we're talking here about the President of the United States' Justice Department, who is prosecuting somebody who tried to publish the contents of his daughter's diary. I think that's sketchy territory. I'm glad that they didn't ultimately go ahead and publish it. But even if they did, I would say, look, it's a free country. This is the price of what living in a free country is. And you cannot use the FBI and the DOJ and the goon squad to bust down people's doors at 6 a.m. in the morning, steal all of their materials, and then start leaking it to the New York Times. I mean, this is the part which really bugs me about the mainstream media, which is we have to recognize this for what it is. I mean, is it all that different than New York Times reporters meeting Daniel Ellsberg, who literally stole and orchestrated a theft from the Pentagon, of the Pentagon Papers, and then transferred them to Neil Sheehan over at the Times? I mean, that could have similarly been prosecuted as some sort of criminal conspiracy and directing of all of this happening, or same thing, whenever the Washington Post and them also tried to obtain those materials. We have to protect that right. This fits with Julian Assange. This fits here with Veritas. And this is why it's just so frustrating that these people don't really believe in freedom of the press. And whenever it's somebody using tactics that they don't agree with, or who is an enemy of the, the regime, quote unquote, they're fine. And like last thing on Veritas, look, they've been caught with sketchy edits. I personally wish James O'Keefe would just publish the interviews and not do those annoying straight to camera monologues, because they actually just ruin
the weird
his product.
Music they lay over top and stuff. It's like, just put on the info, dude.
Project Veritas, if you're listening, stop doing it. But we have used some of their stuff before. The New York Times reporter, the Jeffrey Epstein, Amy Robach. I mean, the guy has published some legit stuff in the past. And I'm just going to err on the side of being able to have that in the open and public square. So I think all of us should stand up against this.
I 100% agree. And it's really simple. Your principles are meaningless if they don't apply when it's people or ideas or organizations that you don't particularly care for. And that's what we see is New York Times, all these people, they're so, they'll use all this high-minded rhetoric about freedom of the press and the power of journalism, how important it is and how you got to protect it. No, we have to resist, Trump and his attacks on the press and all of this. But they only do it when it's easy. They only do it when it when it's one of their friends, fits into an ideology that's comfortable for them, So they are actively not just silent on this, but they're actively trying to sow this narrative that there was something actively illegal about what was done here when you read through their own accounting, you can't figure out, okay, well, what is actually breaking the law? Not what is distasteful, not what is unseemly, but what is actually illegal to justify criminalizing this activity and an FBI raid, knocking on James O'Keefe's door. And even in their telling, there's nothing there that crosses that line. So that's why this story ultimately matters.